Good evening to everybody who's present. Very happy to see the faces here. And I'm especially proud to see the faces of what I might be able to call pre-kindergartners. Pre-kindergartners or first graders? Okay, can you guys come on down? There's a first grader down here. Because there's something that you can do, and I know it. And Mama, come with them to give them the confidence. If you can come and...
I'm the nana, and if it's okay, I just want to keep them back here.
Okay. Let me share a little of my background. Born in Louisiana, in the heart of Louisiana, we call it. It's the other A town known as Alexandria. It is so central to the shape of our boot-shaped state until everything is above it, below it, to the left or the right of it. It's about 4 hours up from New Orleans, and I-49 became a reality maybe about 10 years ago, so that really put us on the map. So if you're leaving New Orleans going north, you'll probably pass through Alexandria. As a matter of fact, the first time I noted that, you'll see our Garden of Memory cemetery, and you'll know that, hey, this must be Alexandria. But that is where I was raised and born and graduated from high school many years ago. And I attended Morehouse College, and I remained in Atlanta and became an employee at Grady Hospital for about 10 years. And then I returned to Alexandria, and to make a long story short, became a nurse. And finally, I ended up as a corrections sergeant at that place known as Angola State Prison. So you're looking at a guard, a nurse, and now what I think I'm going to be for the balance of my days, and I give God the praise, a performer of the poetry of the great Langston Hughes. And what can I say except that this was the greatest in the 20th century among African American poets and writers, and he is considered one of America's greatest poets. They've come to realize that now. I was introduced to the poetry of Langston Hughes by an Angola prison guard. I did not go there for that, but it seems like that was the divine order of things. That guard gave me a book of poems on a weekend that I was ready to leave that prison and relax. And when I arrived in Alexandria, Louisiana, I checked out my newspaper, and there was a Presbyterian church that was hosting a poetry bee, like you've been invited more or less today to come and do what you want to do, recite a poem of your own or somebody else's. And without even letting family know, I needed to do something before I returned to Angola. I was introduced to poetry as a 7th grader, and I figured I could read one or recite one. But the night before that Sunday performance, much like today, I sat in my one-room apartment and flipped through this book that the inmate had given me of poems that spanned from 1776 to 1949. And I stopped at this poem by Langston Hughes. I just liked the sound of it. And I said, well, I read it and I felt it, but then when I recited it in the room, the writers have recorded, thank God, what happened. I had what we commonly call a revelation, what one writer called an epiphany. But to make a long story short, and I'm remembering that hour as I speak now, and it has been a 10-year and 6-month journey. So I told Marty that this would be very nostalgic for me. But here I stand 10 years later, still doing what I think God has called me to do. That poem you will hear in a moment. But I begin my program this evening with a poem that came to me after 3 years into my journey, because I became awed with the audience's reception to the poetry of Langston Hughes. And I actually asked the Lord to give me a poem that acknowledges the fact that I know who my source is and who my spiritual guide has been. So I will perform for you now. Probably the only poem that I can say was written by me. But along the way, a lot of folks who probably didn't understand how creativity worked, well, have you written any of your own? I said, well, no. So I said, Lord, give me a poem that says to the world that gift is from you, and that I need to let my audience know that very early. The Master Poet by Reed Doherty. I don't be knowing where I'm going when the Master Poet speaks and breathes through me. I just let him take his gift of voice, his gift of speech, and all I do is just go with the flow and let the Master Poet craft the show. God knows I'm honored and humbled too. Blessed to have my cake, blessed to eat it too. But there is one thing I too know I know. The Master Poet is the way to go. Thank you.
All right, bravo, 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 bravo,
That's another fan of mine.
bravo, bravo. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent.
There are several members of this audience who are from my hood. So if they sort of get loud, just bear with me. I recruited them, and they may show out a little bit. But that poem I always begin my performances with. Now the next poem, and I think this would be of interest to True, who I understand is the first grader, his sister Tosh, who is a sophomore. In Alexandria, Louisiana, 8 years ago, during a poetry workshop at a middle school, at the lunch hour, this young lady comes up to me and says, Mr. Reed, I wrote this after your performance, and I was inspired to write this tribute to Langston Hughes. I was simply floored, and even as I think about it now, it just blew me away that on her lunch hour, she brought me this piece of paper, and this was the poem that she had written. I don't remember her name, but as soon as I left Alexandria, Louisiana, and got to New Orleans and told a writer that, believe it or not, that writer started a feature article about me with her poem. So her poem now becomes symbolic for all the young people, and Langston was an inspirer of the young people. So I'm glad to have that one in my repertoire. There once was a man, written by an Alexandria, Louisiana middle schooler. There once was a man that the world once knew. He was cool as a summer breeze. His words were strong and his strides were long, and he spoke to people with ease. He taught us a lesson that we won't forget unless we were all born fools. His poems will stay till Judgment Day, and his name was Langston Hughes. Thank you.
Bravo! Excellent! Excellent! Bravo! Encore! 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 Encore!
I have made the point to include that poem because I've spent 10 years guiding, leading, encouraging young people through the poetry of Langston Hughes. But that really caught me off guard that year. And I mean, when I look back, there's no word I would even think of changing. And when I look back, the fact that she started it knowing that there was a man that the world once knew. And by the time Langston died on May 22nd in 1967, the whole world mourned his passing. Well, I think it's time to engage, well, it's going to have to be sister and brother. They're going to come and stand right here and recite after me. Taj, I've remembered her name, and there's True. You can do it, True. I've got pictures of lots of kindergartners who have no problem. Okay, if you'll stand right here, and